For generations, the American dream was a clear path. Work diligently, save conscientiously, and eventually own a home. This aspiration was not merely about shelter. It was a cornerstone of financial stability and upward mobility. Today, that narrative is undergoing a profound transformation. We are witnessing the emergence of a deepening divide in housing, one that challenges long-held assumptions about economic progress and social equity. The promise of home ownership, once broadly accessible, now feels increasingly out of reach for many. This shift demands our urgent attention and critical analysis. Historically, an implicit housing clause underpinned the American social contract. It suggested that hard work and prudent saving would inevitably lead to the security and prosperity of home ownership. This was a fundamental expectation for millions. Home ownership served as the primary engine of middle-class wealth accumulation, providing a tangible asset that appreciated over time. It offered a pathway to build equity, fund education, and secure retirement. This was more than just a roof over one's head. It was a foundation for future generations. For decades, incomes and housing prices moved in a familiar, predictable sync. While market fluctuations occurred, the general trend allowed for a reasonable expectation that rising wages would keep pace with housing costs. This balance fostered a sense of attainable progress. Around the turn of the millennium, a significant structural shift began to alter this long-standing equilibrium. We entered an era where the traditional relationship between earnings and housing costs began to unravel. This phenomenon is what we term the Great Decoupling. Since 2000, incomes for many have grown slowly, constrained by factors like productivity shifts, increasing corporate profits, and evolving economic policies. Wage stagnation has become a persistent challenge for a significant portion of the workforce. This has created a widening gap in purchasing power. Simultaneously, housing prices have surged dramatically, driven by a confluence of forces including global capital flows, speculative investment, and severely constrained supply in desirable areas. The market became less about local economics and more about global dynamics. This created unprecedented upward pressure on costs. The result is the emergence of two distinct economic realities within the same geographic spaces. One segment of the population benefits from appreciating assets, while another struggles to afford basic shelter. This bifurcation is reshaping our communities and our collective future. The first pillar of this new reality is a fundamental redefinition of housing itself. Homes are increasingly viewed not merely as shelter, but as scarce positional goods, coveted assets in a competitive market. This shift prioritizes investment potential over basic human need. Demand now consistently outstrips supply, particularly in economically vibrant and desirable locations. Urban centers and amenity-rich suburbs face intense pressure, driving prices to unprecedented levels. This imbalance creates a perpetual seller's market. The recent pandemic further accelerated this trend, transforming the home into a multifunctional hub for work, education, and recreation. This intensified demand for space and privacy, pushing prices even higher. The home became an indispensable sanctuary. Consequently, the value of housing now encompasses existential security, extending far beyond mere square footage. It represents stability, access to opportunity, and a hedge against future uncertainty. This makes it an even more critical and often unattainable asset. The second pillar highlights the creation of a two-tiered society, sharply divided by housing tenure. This stratification is becoming increasingly entrenched, defining economic opportunity and social mobility. It creates distinct advantages and disadvantages. On one side are the asset-rich, those who bought their homes before the Great Decoupling, often benefiting from locked-in, lower costs and appreciating wealth. Their homes have become significant engines of capital growth. They are insulated from current market pressures. On the other side are the rent-burdened, individuals and families who devote 40 to 50% or more of their income to rent or mortgage payments. This leaves little room for savings or other investments, potentially cementing a permanent class position. They face constant financial precarity. The third pillar reveals a redefinition of what constitutes normal sacrifice for housing. The compromises required today are qualitatively different and often far more severe than those faced by previous generations. The stakes are higher and the trade-offs more profound. Many are forced into geographic exile, accepting multi-hour commutes simply to afford a home in a less expensive area. This sacrifice impacts quality of life, family time, and personal well-being. It is a daily toll on their lives. There is also a significant temporal delay, with first-time homebuyers entering the market at older ages, often postponing major life milestones. Delayed family formation and career progression are common consequences. The traditional life timeline is being stretched. Relational dependence has become a necessity for many, leading to multi-generational households living together out of economic imperative, not just cultural preference. This arrangement, while offering support, can also strain resources and privacy. It reflects a fundamental shift in living arrangements. Finally, there is an unprecedented absorption of risk, with individuals taking on massive debt loads with uncertain outcomes. The financial burden of home ownership today carries a heavier weight of anxiety and potential instability. The future feels less secure. This new housing reality has profoundly reshaped the psychological landscape for millions. The prevailing sentiment has shifted from optimistic aspiration to a defensive calculation, driven by an acute anxiety about getting locked out of the market. Hope is replaced by apprehension. The erosion of linear progress is palpable. The idea that consistent effort leads to predictable advancement has been undermined. Instead, we observe a punctuated equilibrium, characterized by sudden dramatic market leaps that leave many behind. The ladder of opportunity feels broken. This has fostered a sense of spatial resentment, where existing homeowners are sometimes perceived as pulling up the drawbridge, benefiting from policies that restrict new development. The divide is not just economic, but also social, creating friction within communities. This tension is growing. The Great Decoupling has triggered a significant generational reshuffling of wealth and opportunity. Each generation experiences this new reality in distinct ways, shaping their economic trajectories and life choices. The impacts are unevenly distributed. Boomers and older Gen Xers have often become accidental beneficiaries of the decoupling, accumulating immense housing wealth through appreciation. Their timing allowed them to secure assets before the market became prohibitive. They hold a disproportionate share of housing equity. Millennials represent a bifurcated generation, with a stark wealth divide between those who managed to buy before 2020 and those who entered the market afterward. Early buyers gained significant advantages, while later entrants face unprecedented barriers. Their experiences are vastly different. Gen Z is now entering adulthood with perpetual tenancy as the new, unsettling dogma. The expectation of lifelong renting, rather than home ownership, is becoming a normalized prospect. This fundamentally alters their long-term financial planning and aspirations. The trajectory of this deepening divide points towards several possible futures, each with profound implications for society. Understanding these potential outcomes is crucial for informed debate and policy formulation. We must consider the paths ahead. One path leads to a permanent rentier economy, where housing is increasingly owned by large institutions, and a majority of the population remains lifelong tenants. This model concentrates wealth and power in the hands of a few. It fundamentally alters the concept of property. Another possibility is a geographic great sorting, where America fractures into increasingly economically homogeneous zones. Affluent areas become exclusive enclaves, while less prosperous regions struggle with underinvestment and limited opportunity. This exacerbates regional disparities. Alternatively, we could see a policy reckoning demanding dramatic interventions to address the crisis. This might include bold social housing initiatives, comprehensive zoning reform to increase supply, and progressive tax reforms to curb speculation. Such changes would require political will. Finally, there could be a cultural adaptation, where society redefines success away from the single-family home ideal. This could involve embracing co-living arrangements, multi-generational households, or innovative community models. It would require a shift in deeply ingrained values. At the heart of this crisis lies a core tragedy: the breakdown of the narrative itself. The fundamental belief that effort guarantees security and upward mobility is being severely tested. The social contract feels broken for many. Housing has become the primary arena for experiencing and exacerbating inequality. It is where the abstract forces of economics manifest as tangible barriers to well-being and opportunity. The home, once a symbol of stability, now highlights disparity. The new narrative, stark and unsettling, is this: you can do everything right and still lose. This sentiment, born from the housing crisis, undermines faith in the system and threatens the very fabric of our society. We must confront this reality.